The Philadelphia Eagles may be approaching one of the most significant roster decisions of the offseason, and the timing of everything happening right now is far from accidental. As June approaches, attention around A.J. Brown continues to intensify, and the reason has less to do with rumors and more to do with the financial reality surrounding the organization. The key date everyone inside and outside Philadelphia has been watching is June 1st. Up until this point, any potential move involving A.J. Brown would have created an enormous financial burden for the Eagles. Trading him before June 1st would have forced the organization to absorb roughly $43 million in dead money, a figure that simply was not realistic given the team's salary cap situation. That financial obstacle is why, despite months of speculation, nothing has happened yet. Beginning after June 1st, however, the situation changes dramatically. The dead money impact drops significantly, allowing the Eagles to spread the financial consequences across multiple seasons. Suddenly, a trade becomes much more manageable from a salary cap perspective, and that reality has only fueled the discussion surrounding Brown's future. What makes this story even more fascinating is the way Howie Roseman has handled the entire situation. Throughout months of rumors, there have been no major leaks from inside the building designed to damage Brown's value. There has also been no public trade request coming from Brown's camp. Instead, both sides appear to have operated professionally while allowing the business side of football to play out. At the same time, the Eagles have quietly positioned themselves for life after A.J. Brown if a move ultimately happens. This offseason was not spent standing still. Philadelphia made multiple moves at wide receiver that suggest the front office has been preparing for every possible outcome. DeVonta Smith appears ready to assume an even larger role within the offense. The organization clearly believes he can elevate his game and become the centerpiece of the receiving core moving forward. Beyond Smith, the Eagles added additional talent and depth to the position group. They traded up for My Lemon, acquired Dontavian Wicks, and brought in Marquise Hollywood Brown on a one-year contract. Collectively, those moves have created a much different receiver room than the one Philadelphia entered the offseason with. The financial side of this story remains impossible to ignore. While much of the discussion has focused on dead money, there is another component that deserves equal attention. By moving on from A.J. Brown, the Eagles would avoid an enormous amount of future cash commitments over the next several seasons. Brown is scheduled to earn substantial money through the remainder of his contract, and avoiding those future payouts would provide Philadelphia with significant financial flexibility moving forward. As June draws closer, another interesting layer has emerged: leverage. Reports continue to indicate that the New England Patriots remain the most frequently discussed destination, yet negotiations appear far from simple. Philadelphia reportedly wants premium compensation, while New England has shown reluctance regarding certain draft assets. That disagreement has created a fascinating standoff. From the Eagles' perspective, there is no reason to rush. Howie Roseman has built a reputation as one of the NFL's most aggressive and calculated executives. If he does not receive an offer that matches his valuation, there is little reason to believe he will force a deal simply because outside pressure exists. Meanwhile, reports suggest both organizations are attempting to strengthen their negotiating positions. Philadelphia benefits from the perception that multiple teams could be interested. The more potential bidders involved, the greater the chance of driving up compensation. On the other side, New England benefits from projecting patience and suggesting that alternative options exist. The result is a classic NFL negotiation battle, with neither side appearing eager to blink first. What makes the situation even more intriguing is that several other franchises have been mentioned as possible dark horse candidates. Teams such as the Kansas City Chiefs, Los Angeles Chargers, Los Angeles Rams, Jacksonville Jaguars, and Baltimore Ravens have all been discussed as organizations that could theoretically explore a move if circumstances change. Whether any of those clubs become serious contenders remains unclear, but their presence alone adds another layer of uncertainty to the process. While all of this unfolds, the Eagles themselves are moving forward with preparations for the 2026 season. Coaches and players are already focused on learning the new offensive system under offensive coordinator Sean Mannion. The organization is attempting to turn the page from a disappointing 2025 campaign and build a stronger foundation moving forward. That reality may ultimately be the biggest clue of all. Philadelphia is preparing for the future regardless of what happens with A.J. Brown. The front office has created financial flexibility, added depth at wide receiver, and positioned itself to withstand a major roster change if necessary. The question now is whether June finally becomes the month when months of speculation speculation turn into reality. If the Eagles truly believe they have prepared for life without A.J. Brown, and if the financial advantages are as significant as they appear, then the possibility of a blockbuster move may be closer than ever before. But with negotiations reportedly continuing and multiple variables still in play, one major mystery remains unanswered. When the calendar finally flips and the financial restrictions disappear, will Philadelphia pull the trigger on the move, or is there still one final twist waiting in this story? The longer this situation continues, the more it becomes apparent that the Eagles are operating from a position of strength rather than desperation. That is an important distinction because many teams around the league find themselves forced into difficult decisions when contract situations become complicated. Philadelphia does not appear to be in that position. One of the biggest reasons is the simple fact that Howie Roseman has spent months creating options. If a trade happens, the Eagles have already begun building the infrastructure necessary to replace A.J. Brown's production collectively. If a trade does not happen, Philadelphia still retains one of the most talented receivers in football. Either way, the organization is not cornered. That leverage is exactly why reports suggesting the Eagles are demanding premium compensation make perfect sense. According to the latest information surrounding the negotiations, one of the sticking points appears to be draft capital. Philadelphia reportedly wants a first-round pick as the centerpiece of any potential deal. The Patriots, meanwhile, have been reluctant to meet that price outright. As a result, discussions have centered around possible adjustments involving future picks and additional compensation. For Eagles fans, that should come as no surprise. Howie Roseman has built his reputation by maximizing value in major transactions. Throughout his career, he has consistently demonstrated patience during negotiations. He is not known for settling simply to complete a deal. If Philadelphia eventually parts ways with A.J. Brown, it is difficult to imagine Roseman doing so without receiving a package he believes significantly benefits the franchise's future. That is why some reports continue pointing toward a future first-round selection as the foundation of a potential agreement. Even if the exact year of that first-round pick remains under debate, the principle remains the same. The Eagles view A.J. Brown as a premium asset and expect premium compensation in return. What also stands out is how carefully Philadelphia appears to have prepared financially for this possibility. Entering the offseason, cap space was not exactly abundant, yet through a series of moves, restructures, and financial adjustments, the Eagles created additional flexibility. That flexibility becomes particularly important if they must absorb dead money following a post-June 1st transaction. This is where the long-term picture becomes impossible to ignore. Beyond the immediate salary cap implications, moving on from A.J. Brown would dramatically alter Philadelphia's future financial commitments. The organization would avoid massive cash expenditures scheduled over multiple seasons. In today's NFL, where roster construction often revolves around managing expensive contracts, that type of flexibility can be incredibly valuable. Of course, none of this changes the reality that A.J. Brown remains an elite talent. When healthy and playing at his best, he is capable of changing games. Defenses must account for him on every snap. His physicality, route running ability, and playmaking skills have helped define the Eagles' offense during his time in Philadelphia. Replacing that kind of player is never easy, regardless of how many moves a team makes. That is why this entire situation has generated so much attention across the league. It is not simply about a receiver potentially changing teams. It is about one of the NFL's most recognizable players, a franchise with championship aspirations, and one of the league's most respected front office executives navigating an extremely delicate decision. Meanwhile, the football side of the operation continues moving forward. The Eagles have been fully engaged in offseason activities, working to implement Sean Mannion's offensive system and establish a new identity heading into the 2026 season. Coaches and players are focused on correcting the issues that contributed to an underwhelming 2025 campaign. The goal is clear: leave last season behind and create a stronger foundation for the future. In many ways, that effort may explain why the organization appears so calm throughout this process. While outside speculation continues to grow louder, Philadelphia seems committed to its long-term vision. Every move made this offseason suggests a front office thinking several steps ahead rather than reacting emotionally to headlines. And that brings us to what could be the most important days of this entire saga. Once the calendar reaches June and the financial barriers disappear. The conversation shifts from could this happen to will this happen. The speculation stage begins to fade. Decisions become real. Offers become concrete. Negotiations either accelerate or collapse. If the Patriots ultimately increase their offer, a deal could materialize quickly. If Philadelphia receives interest from another team willing to meet its asking price, the entire landscape could change overnight. And if no organization is willing to satisfy Howie Roseman's demands, the Eagles may simply keep A.J. Brown and move forward with one of the most talented receivers in football still on the roster. At this point, every possibility remains on the table. What is undeniable, however, is that the Eagles have prepared extensively for this moment. Financially, strategically, and from a roster building perspective, they appear ready for whichever path unfolds. That preparation may ultimately determine whether this situation becomes one of the biggest trades of the NFL offseason or simply another example of Philadelphia leveraging its position to maximize value. The waiting period is almost over. The speculation has dominated headlines for months. Now the entire league is watching to see whether June finally delivers the outcome everyone has been debating. If there is one thing that has become increasingly clear throughout this entire situation, it is that the Eagles are not viewing this as a short-term decision. Everything points toward a front office evaluating the next several years rather than focusing solely on the upcoming season. That mindset explains why the financial component continues to play such a significant role in the discussion. For many fans, the immediate reaction is simple. Why move on from a player as talented as A.J. Brown? It is a fair question. Elite receivers are difficult to find, and organizations spend years searching for players capable of producing at the level Brown has shown throughout his career. But NFL front offices often have to make decisions that are uncomfortable in the present if they believe those decisions create advantages in the future. From Philadelphia's perspective, this situation is not just about one player. It is about roster construction. It is about maintaining flexibility. It is about ensuring that future resources can be allocated across multiple positions while keeping the team competitive year after year. That philosophy has defined Howie Roseman's approach for a long time. Rather than chasing short-term solutions, Roseman has consistently prioritized keeping the organization in a position where it can adapt quickly. Whether through the draft, free agency, trades, or contract management, the Eagles have built a reputation for constantly looking ahead. The moves made this offseason fit perfectly within that philosophy. Adding depth at wide receiver was not an accident. Creating additional salary cap flexibility was not an accident. Exploring potential trade scenarios was